to the forefront of innovation.
Good morning and welcome to An Eye for AI. As always, we're very thankful to Community News for allowing us this platform because there aren't many things hotter than AI right now. Everybody's talking about it. I would venture to say just about anybody who has access to it is using it. And the purpose of the show is just to learn more about AI, different perspectives, how people are using it, and the future of AI, because AI is not only the future, it's the present. So today we've had people from academia before, but we've always had a small business focus. And today we're going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to talk about AI and education and the future of education. So without further ado, I want to introduce, she goes by Yo, right?
Yeah.
Mendez-Sanchez. She is the person in charge of the BIT Center, right, at Miami Dade College, the Kendall campus. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlos. It's really nice to be here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation and just to share a little bit more about what I know and what I have learned and what I'm exposed there at Miami Dade College in terms of like what we're doing with AI in learning and also what the future of that entails for higher education and also for the future of learning, right?
Yep. All very important. And I have a bunch of questions. I'm very curious. But before we start talking about the subject matter, I always like to start with knowing a little bit more about you, for not just for me, but for the audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from originally, how you got into education, and tell us a little bit about the BIT Center too, because I've been there. I went to the inauguration, as a matter of fact, and it's such a cool place.
That's awesome. Well, a little bit more about me. So like you say, my name is Joe. My full name is Yhosemar Mendez-Sanchez. I'm graduated as an engineer, as a chemical engineer, for a matter of fact. And I have 2 master's degrees. One of them is more focused on the supply chain management, and the other is more on innovation. And people always say, oh, I didn't know that you could like get a degree in innovation. But innovation is really about like bringing products to life. As you say, I'm the manager of the Business Innovation Center at Miami Dade College. And our role or mission there, we are kind of like an appendix of the School of Global Business, Trade and Transportation. And what's really our mission is to build bridges between the industry and what's happening in the industry and what's happening in the classroom. So we provide opportunities to students to learn by doing. We provide innovation challenges where they come and solve problems to startups and companies that they maybe are looking to rethink their business model, or they are looking to capture a new segment of the market. So our students help with that. Also, part of our role is to provide industry certifications to our students. So find ways that they can get these micro credentials that are recognized, let's say in fields like marketing, supply chain, or AI. So when they go to get that first job, is not only that they have an excellent GPA, but they also have an industry certified thing that is say, I know a little bit about digital marketing, or I know about finance, or I know about investment. And part of like also our nature is to bring the industry to the campus, to enable recruitment opportunities, to enable that students hear what's going on, in those workplaces. And a lot of those conversations, I think I've been with the college for 3 years, and like for the past 2 years, they center a lot on how AI is changing the way businesses work, the way that companies operate, and so on. So we bring those companies like EY, companies like Bank of America, to talk with their students about how the day-to-day of those people look like, and to encourage them to pursue careers in those tracks. So that's kind of like what the BAT Center is. About my background, like I say, that's my background. I have also the privilege to be a futurist.
Okay.
That is a person that research signals in the present and trends, and try to help organizations to prepare for the future. And that's a role that I decided to kind of like support the college in that endeavor. And as part of that endeavor, right now at the School of Global Business where I'm at, we are trying to find ways to incorporate AI in our curriculum beyond just using this as a tool, let's say, to summarize information and so on. But it's like try to find ways, let's say, if we're talking about accounting, how accounting will have repercussions in the day-to-day of an accountant, and how can we embed that in like per course and per curriculum, not only, just using ChatGPT, Claude, and all these tools, but it's like how that will actually look like in the subject matter.
In practice. And
yeah, in practice. Yeah.
So, it's very interesting to me that there have been several, revolutions in this country from industrial wise, electricity, the internet, and now AI. To me, AI is maybe arguably, of course, the biggest thing that's ever happened. So now AI is everywhere, including in academia. That genie is not going back in the bottle. AI is here to stay. So one of the curiosities I have is that obviously students are using AI in different ways. How has the education institutions dealt with that? Are there gaps? What's going on with that? How do you deal with that?
I think that it's like you say, it's a reality, and there is no any way to capture that genie back, right? I think that like organizations in higher ed and in education in general, they are responding in a way that they're trying to create some sort of like regulations and policies to tell students what to do and what not to do. But the truth is that it's like a big tsunami of things happening. And the fact is that when you talk about innovation or when you talk about regulations, that's the slowest path that you can take, right? So many organizations, they are trying to create policies, they're trying to create guidelines for students to know, oh, you have to disclose if you use AI, you have to do this, you have to do this. But the thing is that like, it's an approach that is very reactive. It's not necessarily tapping on like the actual need. That is like, how do we verify that like people are really learning? Because let's say for when I went to college, there was no all these technologies, right? So like you will go and take a test, and even if you take that test, it was in pen and paper. You're gonna write your thoughts. You're gonna make some, mistakes in your spelling, and the professor will see that like the authenticity of your work is yours, right? So like with AI, and especially with other macro trends like studying online, or taking an exam in an asynchronous operandum, like you're not necessarily in the same room that your professor. You're not necessarily writing this. You're using you're typing, you're writing, right? So like there is some guardrails to force students to not open AI tools and so on. For example, the college has something that is called Respondus. It's a software that it blocks all your tabs. So it makes sure that you only open the tab where you're taking your exam, right? But that's kind of like a more like surveillance.
Oh, yeah,
tool, which is not necessarily put like any trust on the student, but like you also see that there is like this tendency of people migrating to do more evaluations. They're like more like oral presentations. So asking the student to say what was the thought or what was the process to come up with the result, because that's where you actually can validate that this output that the student is generating or submitting, let's say this artifact, is something that they really do and they really thought about it. Like I feel like the biggest complexity is that we don't necessarily have to, and that's like more like a personal opinion, we don't necessarily have to find ways to tell what to do and what not to do. It's more like embrace AI as part of like the learning process, and is as an assistant to reshift the way that we teach. Because nowadays, or like I think until like ChatGPT, came up as a boom and helps everybody, like streamline their processes and so on. We used to focus education and teaching very much like delivering information to others. And because now information, because of the internet and because of AI, is becoming so much personalized and the access is so much more democratic, our roles as facilitators of education are changing, right? So it's like more like, how can we support skills that are not necessarily part of subject matter expertise, but it's more like helping people judge outputs. How can we help people be more curious, or how can we help them collaborate the best, right? So like something that I'm seeing in this landscape is that everybody is using it, but like the way of using it is different. And what education or what the education ecosystem should do is no longer just to say, okay, this is right and this is wrong. It's like, okay, this is happening and we have to embrace this.
Right.
And how do we embrace this for the benefit of learning, for the benefit of students gaining experience when, you know, there is no repetition of tasks that they can repeat to actually learn. So how can we rethink the way that we transfer that experience to that we transfer knowledge, but like by engaging in a different way, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like finding all these other paths where like AI is an enabler of learning, and AI is not a replacer of thinking, like not replacing student thinking or like professional thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Because one of the notions I have is that, you know, it started with the smartphone and being able to store phone numbers. We're starting to become dumber, right? I used to have a million phone numbers in my head.
Right.
I don't have them anymore. And then the internet and everything else that goes along with that. And now, especially with AI, you don't have to memorize anything. Basically, AI has, you know, become for some an entity that thinks for them almost. But let's talk about that a little bit, about the uses of AI and how and what you're observing at the most rudimentary level. It's a search engine. And, you know, then everything else goes beyond that to where it becomes maybe your business partner, helps you think things through, et cetera. What have you seen among students or learners? Where are people right now?
Yeah, so you can see it's a very big spectrum, right,
Yep.
of possibilities. I've seen a lot of students that they use this tool, like you say, like a search engine, like Google, or
Right.
like they will go there and ask questions. And there will be even people that they would use this as a tool, let's say for play, you know, like just to have scenarios and ask these LLMs questions like, oh, if I find like a very curious student asking like jokes or things like those, like very simple things, and there is this use of as a search engine, but also as a companionship, because like when you see somebody like maybe exchanging jokes with LLMs, you see that there is this need of like social interaction that people are lacking.
That is amazing to me.
In like what you're talking jokes with like Claude is like what you're asking these sort of questions. So like I've seen students doing more like social interactions with these LLMs.
So break that down for me, because this is amazing to me. Social interaction is they're actually socializing and having conversations,
and like having like some sort of like companionship with
Okay.
these, applications. Indeed, like there is some of the stats of like OpenAI say that like most people, or like a very big group of their users, they use AI as a companionship. So like, oh, I feel alone, how can I do something to feel a little bit better? And like these systems that were not necessarily created for therapy or
Right.
companionship, they are being used for that, right? So that's like kind of like in the social realm. There is these people that are like more practical. They use it, let's say, as a search engine. And then, you know, you have other approaches that is like people that use it as business partners or like assistants. Right now, the smartest LLM, like I think like is Claude.
Yeah.
Like and Claude has the competencies or like the abilities as a, let's say, an average college student. So if you need Claude to do something for you, you can like program it as a project and instruct it to behave or like to do certain tasks for you. So like I had been in classes, for example, I messaged to you before this podcast started. I'm in a marketing and AI class where literally your facilitator, he taught us how to create go-to-market strategies with our projects in Claude.
Mm-hmm.
So every person would choose a business case. If you have a business, you can use your own business,
Right.
and you will combine different LLMs like Perplexity that is more
Research,
suitable for research. You will combine Notion that is better for creating systems
Right.
and databases, and then you will combine that with Claude that it has assistants that interconnect with all these tools,
Right.
and you will combine them to create like a powerhouse for your go-to-market strategy. So you go to Perplexity and find out what are the possible flaws in your funnel, in your sales funnel.
Right.
And it will tell you what your competitors are doing. And it's going to give you a market intelligence snapshot of things. So like, even like for you as a business owner, like knowing how to set up these systems is extremely powerful, so you make less mistakes, right? So like you have in everything in between, right? So like then you have like students that maybe English is not their first language,
Right.
and they need to improve their pronunciation so they can talk in the voice kind of like commanding format, and ask how to improve. Or students using it as well for like job interviews. So let's say, oh, I'm having an interview in Bank of America to be a bank teller.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of questions they can ask me? These are the list of questions, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna reply, and help me wrap up my answers correctly. So like using the SMART method to show specifics, objectives, blah blah blah. You really can use these systems to coach you if you know what to ask, right? And like I think that that's where the key is. So like
That is,
you have this sea of knowledge. All these LLMs, they have like the biggest libraries in the world. But if you don't know, let's say the code, or you don't know how to ask the questions,
Right.
they won't be able to provide you the answers. So if you know how to ask for the flaws on your go-to-market strategy and like your sales funnel, and you have all the jargon to formulate the right question, they will be able to help you. But if you go there and you say, oh, I sell t-shirts in Etsy and I want to make more sales, the level of quality they will give you is not that great.
So what the point there is that what LLMs are, they're all amazing, but what they don't have is context. Yeah. You have to feed it the context. You have to be very specific in what you're looking for. And over time, I really believe almost anybody can figure that out. Hopefully that, they get a kind of generic answer, and then you start saying, well, that's not really what I was looking for. Let me ask it this way. Mm-hmm. So, and you mentioned Claude. Claude is, to me, the LLM of the moment. Mm-hmm. It's so flexible. I mean, it has so many features at this point, with co-work, with skills, now with design, with Claude Code. There's just so much you can do with Claude. And I use several models. And one of the things that it's done for me is it's made me incredibly efficient. So, for example, my proposals, I have a list of services, and so they're pretty standardized. There is some customization to every one, but so what took me, let's say, an hour to do a proposal, I can do it literally in 2 seconds. It'll spit out a proposal. So that's just one example, and that was done in something called Base 44, and I can probably do it in Claude now. That was way so you can do anything in Claude. You mentioned a use case where somebody was going to go interview and possibly get a list of questions beforehand. So it's no secret, graduation time this year, I can't tell you how many times on the news I saw a commencement speech and the speaker even mentioned AI and the students all booed. So it seems like graduates are threatened by AI. How can education turn that around?
Look, it always comes back to, I think that like how we approach things. Like there is influencer I follow that she always talk about fear, and she say that like sometimes like when you have something that you fear in front of you, you can either stay in the comfort of what you know, or step into the discomfort of like challenge yourself and see how it goes and struggle and so on. So like I think AI is something that it came up to make not only students uncomfortable and threatened, but like everybody else, no matter what profession they pursue. Because even if you're a plumber, there's going to be AI embedded in what you do in your trade. There's going to be predictive analytics, predicting the maintenance of the buildings. There's going to be a level of literacy that you have to acquire because the way the jobs were before is no longer what they're going to be. Right now, we're living a transition and it might feel scary, but the thing is that like what it changes, like how you react, right? Unfortunately, what's going on with AI right now, I told you that like Cloud has the ability to behave like a smart college student, right? So if you are a college student and you're trying to get your first job, the way that we learn in our first jobs, it was going there and like learning by repetition, having the chance to, if you're doing, for example, I'm an engineer, so my very first job was in like an engineering firm, and I needed to do descriptions of processes. I needed to do drawings, like engineering drawings, and I needed to do this by myself and repeat and repeat and repeat, and somebody's gonna give me Q&A and it would tell me how to make it better. And you're gonna develop this mentor-mentee situationship in your first job that is more like an apprenticeship, right?
Right.
Those apprenticeships are gone, and they are gone. It's not something that like is not feasible for companies to have those apprenticeships anymore. So like companies will be asking,
is it not feasible, or is it that AI has just replaced them? Because
the thing is that like if you have AI is infinite labor, right? So if you now find a way to automate the drawing of those engineering things that or you find a way to automate how somebody classified reconciliations, or if you find a way to automate what entry-level jobs did with infinite work that comes from AI, is not cost effective for you to hire somebody to do that.
Right.
So where are they going to get the experience? That's kind of like the challenge that the future of higher education in the future of work is facing, right? And also the future of leadership.
So it's all about getting that experience then.
So how do you get that experience if you don't have access to those jobs? So like that's where the dilemma of universities and colleges comes in right now. That is how you will transfer experience without necessarily going in through that traditional path, because now you're going to have to get the maturity to, like, for example, you work in marketing, right? So like when you see, let's say, a marketing plan, because of your experience, you are able to criticize what is good, what is bad, how to make it better. But like if you are a recent graduate and you're graduating from marketing and you're making, let's say, a marketing plan with AI, you don't have the years of experience to say, well, I have seen this and this works, or I have tried this with this kind of company and this doesn't work. And this is, like that judgment or that expertise is something that we need to find ways to transfer when they are still in college.
So that's really interesting to me. And it reminds me of an interview I did once. I interviewed an investment banker. At that point, he was experienced. And he told me the first day he went to work, his boss told him, always have a clean shirt in your office. And he figured out why, because he slept there a lot. And he told me he didn't know what Christmas was. He didn't know because he was always working. When he started, he told me it took him, I don't know how long to analyze a financial statement, but it got to the point where in minutes he could analyze a financial statement. So what's going to happen to that? Is this what we're talking about here? That's not
how you gain that level of mastery,
right?
And that level of confidence to make, let's say, estimates or to do anything like you are able, for example, when you do market research. When I did my first market research project, I have a coach that was with me there in my master's, and he was telling me, okay, asking me the right questions. What is the patterns that you look here? What is that you do, right? Nowadays, for example, if you're doing a market research, you can get all the data and you could see already, if you have already the expertise, when you're hearing the person, you already see the patterns, because you were the same person interviewing earlier in the other focus group. So you already see those patterns because the experience get you there. But like, how do we embed this experience in teaching? How do we rethink the way that we transfer that experience? Because for them to have access, they're going to be now the new entry level jobs. They need to audit the output of those automated those agents doing their work,
right?
But they need to have the seniority to judge those outputs and say, yeah, it's good or not. They have to develop some level of seniority without going to work, which is a dilemma, because you go to your first job to get seniority to be able to move in the corporate ladder or to get another position. So that's kind of like one of the dilemmas. And like how you do that is probably just giving a lot of hands-on experience at the class.
Right.
That is like, for example, we at Miami Dade College, we have these innovation challenges from like, and like students that are like in their very first year, let's say they do a customer discovery for an AI startup. So like they go and interview people, they come up with ideas. And like when they're doing this project that it might be, you know, just a school project, they're actually working as consultants for a company, right? They are building a portfolio of things that they achieve, and they are adding that to their acumen, right? And that make us rethink all the way that you evaluate. So you no longer need to evaluate like, oh, taking an exam, but you need to evaluate seeing like what can people produce while they are studying. So like,
so is this happening already, or is this something that you're transitioning to, or it's the future, or is this actually happening?
This is happening in other universities, and this is something that like a lot of higher education institutions are looking at. Is like, how can you rethink the way that you assess? Again, AI is very helpful to not only moving to the portfolio kind of route, but also to moving the direction of creating scenarios and role play. So I was recently in a conference in Orlando. It was a teaching and learning conference, and organized by a university there. And there was faculty coming from a university in Peru that he developed some sort of like customer service AI agent to make their final exam. So students will pick up the phone, will call this agent, will have a conversation, like if they're having a conversation with their supervisor, and the agent will have all the information about the case study that they should be prepared to answer, and they will respond. They will have to showcase decisions. They will have to make micro decisions during that call. The call lasted like around like 10 to 13 minutes.
Okay.
And in that interaction with an AI agent, you could see who really learned, and you could see who really was kind of like, you know, scrambling and figuring out. Right. But like, the thing is that like AI give us an opportunity. So let's say for each model of whatever I'm teaching, to create these other kind of like versions of me, or like, you know, super versions of like supervisors that you're gonna ask them, and they're gonna help them make those decisions, or like transport them to those scenarios. So again, it's transferring experience, and it's transferring that situation into the college context, right? Like it's just like how to bring again the industry closer and the reality closer, because those conversations are what people are having in the industry. And that's why, for example, in my role, our focus on like building those bridges with the industry is very important, because we're coming to this point that like we really need to work together. So we
when you say we, it is who?
It is like higher education in the industry.
Okay.
We need to really work together to help the students not stay in limbo, right? Like to help the students to prepare to whatever comes next. So if you're coming next and you're telling me that like you don't need somebody that learned by repetition, you need somebody with this expertise or this confidence in XY aspect of the role, how can I do that so when this person graduates next year, they have that competency?
Yeah, because because what you say I see as critical, because the needs on both the corporate side and the education side have changed. So, you know, what used to be an entry-level position here is now up here, correct? And so needs have changed, you need to come together with corporate America or corporations in general and see where education will benefit them the best and how a corporation can help make that happen. To me, that's what's going on. Last question.
Yeah.
And I know time flies when we're doing these interviews because a half hour goes by very quickly. You being a futurist, where is AI going? Where is AI education all going? 5 years from here, what are we going to see?
I think that we might see lots of different things. Like there is scenarios where we all embrace AI beyond a teaching and learning tool, but we start teaching how it had repercussions by discipline, right? Let's say in accounting, how accounting was redefined by AI or how it keeps redefining because these changes are happening every day, right?
Yep.
But like we build systems to keep updating or curriculums just based on what's going on in the industry and aligning, just trying to close that gap. But we go by discipline. We just don't focus only on like ChatGPT or like customized tools for like learning. We embrace it all and we use it as a platform, as an enabler of learning and education, creating the right guardrails to make sure that students are learning, that the students have critical thinking, that they are developing other skills that are very important and always have been very important, but they are critical in this age of AI because you need to really make sure that whatever output you're putting out there and you're saying, yes, this is my work, that is really your work and that you verify it and that you have all the competencies, not only from your subject matter expertise, but also the literacy to work with these tools, right? I do believe that AI is going to be like, Microsoft Word and all these word processors.
Right.
It's going to be something that like everybody will need to know how to do. There is this other scenario, which is like very, not very optimistic, where if we are not proactive, AI might replace the need of having a degree.
Right.
And like people would think that like, okay, what is the point if I can learn, let's say, all about, let's say you're going to a film school, if I can learn about all the best directors in the world through an LLM, like what is the point of going and pay my way to college, right? So like if we don't proactively change the way that we offer and teach others, what might end up happening is that like people will perceive education is obsolete, right? And education and learning is not something that only happens in the classroom. And that's an idea that like people struggle to see. Education happens all the time, especially when you go to work. You don't necessarily get a degree, but you are learning every day.
That's where I learned marketing is on the job, not necessarily at school.
Not necessarily going to school, right? So like it might happen that a lot of higher education institutions, that they decide to be as proactive as, for example, Miami Dade College has been very proactive on this. They might stay out of the game,
right?
Say. I do believe that like AI will have a role in the classroom, that it goes beyond being a tool and just a tool that that you use. Is going to be a third partner between the student and the professor to rechange the way that things work. So like if you have all this knowledge, maybe my role as a professor is not for you to listen content, it's for me to coach you when you are in doubt or to help you when you have a struggle. But it's not necessarily lecturing. It's more like mentoring,
helping you solve problems, for example.
How you solve problems, tell you about my experience doing this, and it's transforming that relationship and how that classroom works, and it's transitioning onto building skills that will never disappear, like human skills, like talking in public, human skills, like collaborating effectively. I always say my students, you all say that you're good in teamwork and like you're not. It's like how can you work with an actual team? How you can coordinate a project.
Very important.
How you can execute. Nowadays we see with a lot of AI, everybody has a business idea.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, how you execute that idea. So it's like how you have this executioner skill that is like you just can transform something that is untangible or is in paper and you actually can build it or offer it if it's a service, right?
Yeah.
So like we're gonna see the need of like straining some skills at some time because we were focusing in so many technical skills that now AI can do. We don't necessarily focus on those. So but like those skills are gonna be the ones that make individuals, graduates, even professionals to stand out, because in a world that everybody can go to ChatGPT and get 50 ideas,
Right.
the one that execute the ideas stand out.
Is the winner. Yeah.
In a world where everybody can like craft the perfect email, the one that can stand in front of the audience and present the outcomes of the project effectively is the one that like get the promotion, right? So like we will have to start seeing what are those things that give competitive advantage to students and that prevail their career relevance, and focus more on those and mentor those, because honestly it's like you learn negotiation by negotiating, you learn public speaking by doing that. And it's like how you in your let's say college journey or your university journey, we embed more of these opportunities for you to build that maturity, to build that seniority that help you secure that position that we were talking about.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Yo. We got to have you back because there's just never enough time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I would love to be back and like talk more about future of learning, education, and how AI is changing, career relevance. That at the end of the day is what we have been talking about. It's like how you make sure that students and professionals or even businesses, they stay relevant and stop seeing AI as a threat, but more as an enabler that is gonna elevate your business or is gonna give you an opportunity to stand out, compared to others and so on.
Got it. Thanks so much. And thank you for being on, joining us here on An Eye for AI. We'll see you again soon.